Should you be working towards losing fat or gaining muscle first? Siyempre, lahat tayo may goal body at meron tayong gustong makita sa ating katawan. Pero ang tanong, paano ba natin yun makukuha? Is it through building muscles at the gym or losing fat through a calorie deficit? Which goes first, or can you do it at the same time? My name is Sebastian. I'm a registered nutritionist and dietitian, and this is the Donut Box, where we unbox stories and talk about things we usually don't talk about. Today, it's body recomposition. So if you're ready, let's unbox this story. The Donut Box. The Donut Box. Welcome back to another episode. If you are watching the video, you can see I'm wearing a jacket. Yes, because one of the best things has happened recently, and that is I had an aircon installed in my room, and it's quiet. It is a Panasonic aircon, and I went with them to Japan earlier in this year because we were working together on a little bit of a campaign and a project, and we were able to see how they test their air conditioning. So from a super duper cold room to a super duper quiet room to hear the aircon, and I'm so happy because this room, my room, mainit. As in sobrang init. Because I closed the windows so that the noise isn't too loud from the outside. And it's just the spot of my room as well. Yung tipong pag nagvi-video ako, pawis na pawis ako at parang hindi ko na kaya. So when a video takes too long, like a podcast that takes around an hour to film, or if I'm filming multiple videos where I'm changing clothes, pinapawisan na talaga ako. So now that I'm wearing a jacket here in front of you guys, I feel like I can keep on filming all day. Well, one of the things that I did the past few weeks was share a question box on @thedonutboxpod Instagram. Don't forget to follow. And I asked you guys what topics you wanted to hear more from the pod. And someone mentioned body recomposition. And I'm actually very, very happy about this topic. I think a lot of the times when we are working towards our goals in health, ang naiisip lang natin ay gusto natin mag-lose ng weight. We don't really hear more about what other things we can do. We just feel like reaching our goal body means to lose weight, and that's that. But there's actually so much more. And so we are going to tackle a little bit more about body recomposition and how or what steps you can do to achieve that if you ever want to go there. Story, I've got my donut. Okay. Now, first, we have to answer the question of what is body recomposition? And to answer that, what is the composition of our body in the first place? So when you step on a scale, usually you'll see a number there, which is your weight. That's essentially your mass times gravity, or kung gaano ka bigat ka. But it doesn't really say kung saan galing yung bigat na yon, or what your body is composed of. And our body is composed of many different elements and things. You have, of course, your body fat. You also have your muscle mass. You also have your water weight. Meron din tayo dyang skeleton or skeletal bones. And you also have your organs. So when we're talking about body composition, we're talking about what your body is composed of. And when we talk about body recomposition, we usually mainly refer towards losing or decreasing body fat in the body and increasing muscle mass. Gusto natin pababain ang body fat percentage at ipataas ang muscle mass natin. Now, just because you're increasing your muscle mass doesn't automatically mean you're going to be bulky. Hindi ibig sabihin magiging the Hulk na tayong lahat. That is not how it works. In fact, a lot of people struggle to build muscle because it's a lot harder than we think. Lifting a singular weight is not going to instantly give you giant arms. If it was like that, nobody would have any struggle keeping in shape because it would be so freaking easy. Sana ganon, pero hindi. So if you're afraid to lift weights, don't be. That's not how it works. Now, another misconception is that fat turns into muscle, and that is not the case. Body fat and muscle mass are made of completely different compounds, structures, chemicals. Magkaiba sila. Yung muscle mass natin ay gawa sa amino acids at yung body fat naman natin ay mga fatty acids. They do not convert to each other. Kaya madalas kapag ka nag-lose ka ng fat, hindi automatic na nagiging muscle yan. I think that's one of the most common Filipino misconceptions kasi sinasabi natin na, uy, tumitigas na yung taba ko, nagiging muscle na. That's not really how it is. It's usually either you're losing fat or you are gaining muscles. Why does body recomposition matter at all? Well, it matters for multiple reasons. One could be, and largely the reason why people tend to turn towards it, is the aesthetic purposes. Pagka nagbabody recomposition ka kasi, nagbibuild ka ng muscle, nag-lose ka ng fat, nakikita talaga yan sa ating katawan. Let's say somebody is 150 pounds and 25% body fat, while another person is 150 pounds and 15% body fat. Magkaiba ang itsura. And that's also why we largely emphasize not relying too much on the number on the scale, because it doesn't show the full story. Another big reason for taking a look at body recomposition is, of course, napaka-importante ng muscle sa ating katawan. As we grow older, there's something called age-related sarcopenia, which is essentially your muscle mass decreasing as you age. At napaka-importante yan kasi madalas pagka tumatanda tayo, nagiging mas frail yung katawan natin o mas malaking chance na magkakaroon tayo ng injury pag nalaglag tayo dahil wala tayo or kulang sa muscle. So it's also a very health-related thing, especially because higher body fat percentages also can be linked to certain diseases. So it's very important for us to find that balance. Now, going back into aesthetics, we usually hear this term called skinny fat, where somebody is skinny or in a small body, but looks quote-unquote fat. And that's usually because this person may be in a smaller body, but doesn't have a lot of muscle and has more body fat. So that's where body recomposition comes in. At what point in our journey do we focus on building muscle? And at what point in our journey do we focus on losing fat? Or can we do it at the same time? So you'll usually hear terms like bulking and cutting, and that's more often in the bodybuilding world. So bodybuilding is quite an extreme sport where you really go on intense diets and training regimens to change and try to make your body very specific. Kasi alam ko, marami sa atin tumitingin o naghahanap ng katawan na parang bodybuilder. Maybe not at their peak stage form, but usually around the bodybuilder aesthetic of the abs, the shoulders, and all of those things. We tend to look for that. And for women, siguro hinahanap natin yung tinatawag na Pilates body, where you have the 11s and you have toned arms, all of those things. Those things are achieved by having muscle mass. A lot of women think that in order for you to achieve that toned body, it's all about losing weight and doing lots of cardio, but it's actually largely connected to building muscle mass so that you can get the quote-unquote shape that you want. Now, a lot of the times, in order to reach bodybuilder level, it is very intensive processes of what we like to call bulking and cutting. So, ano ba talaga yon? See, when it comes to gaining muscle, usually this happens with a calorie surplus. And when it comes to losing fat, this usually happens on a calorie deficit. Calories are a unit of energy. They measure how much energy we get from food, how much energy we get from carbs, fats, and protein. And calories are also used to measure the energy that our body uses in a day for different functions. Our basal metabolic rate, the digestion of food, your physical activity, and even your non-exercise activity. And usually you will hear the terms calorie deficit and calorie surplus. Now, everybody has something we call your maintenance calories. At ito yung dami ng enerhiya na kailangan mo sa isang araw para ma-maintain yung katawan mo kung saan ito ngayon. Essentially, the exact amount of energy you need in a day is also the exact amount of energy you will consume in a day. So there will be no changes in terms of energy or in terms of fat and muscle. Now, when it comes to a calorie surplus, you are consuming more energy or more calories than you need in a day. because that excess will be used now or stored as either excess energy, which is in the form of fat, or it will be utilized for building muscle. On the other hand, you have calorie deficit, kung saan mas konti yung kakainin mo sa kailangan mo na enerhiya sa isang araw para gagamitin naman ng katawan mo yung enerhiya na nakastore, which is either in stored fat or in cases which we want to avoid, using your muscles as energy. So when it comes to weight loss, we want to have a calorie deficit, so your body will use those stored energies. And when it comes to gaining muscle, we usually want to have a surplus. And that's the bulking and cutting phases that a bodybuilder will go through. Usually, they will be bulking para ma-build yung muscle kasi medyo mahirap mag-build ng muscle kapag ka naka-calorie deficit ka. And that's because when it comes to building muscle, it's an anabolic or a building up situation. You have to build something. While you have fat loss, which is catabolic, where you are destroying or cutting something. So usually, if somebody is trying to build muscle, they'll put on a calorie surplus and they'll go on what they call like a bulking phase, where they eat a lot more calories and lift a lot heavy until they build muscle. And then they go into a cutting phase, which is when you start to try to lose body fat so that the muscles that you've built can start to show up. And these words are usually used in the bodybuilding world, or even those who are maybe a little bit more into the fitness world as well. Kasi gusto nga mag-build ng muscle, gusto mag-lose ng fat, and you have to usually do this in those stages. Because the process of building muscle and losing fat are a little bit counterintuitive from each other, one might not be able to do both at the same time. But it doesn't mean it's impossible. Now, what are the situations where someone can achieve both building muscle and losing fat at the same time without having to go through bulking and cutting phases? Well, usually that depends on one, training experience. Beginners or those who are probably restarting their journey will have an easier time to do body recomposition or build muscle and lose fat at the same time. Kapag ka medyo intermediate to advanced ka na, mas mahirap na yun gawin. Kapag ka beginner ka pa, mas makikita mo talaga kasi there's more muscle to build and there's also more fat to lose in that sense. So it's easier for you to do both at the same time. Another one would be returning athletes. So say somebody who has been very experienced but took a break. They used to have more muscle, but they lost that muscle. They can have, when they come back to training, body recomposition can be something that their body easily does kasi merong muscle memory effect. Na nabibuild ulit yung muscle na nawala nung hindi na sila nag-training. And of course, there's also individuals who have more body fat. They are more likely to be able to do body recomposition or build muscle and lose fat at the same time, mainly because there's a lot more energy reserves or body fat stores that can be utilized in this process without losing muscle mass in that journey. So if you are one of those three, you can definitely jump into your body recomposition era of trying to build muscle and lose fat at the same time. Although, to be fair, those rates are not going to be super fast. We're not saying that you're instantly going to be like bulky and fit and cut in 1 month just because you're in that category. Sinasabi lang natin na mas madali makakuha ng resulta na gusto mo pag galing ka dun sa tatlo. If you've been a little bit more advanced, if you've been dieting and working out for a bit more time, you're less likely going to see those results or those quote-unquote newbie gains. You don't always have to focus on just one at a time. I think that's very important to note. Most of the time, focusing on just building muscle or just losing fat is more specific to athletes or people who are really invested in their fitness journey. If you are somebody who is a casual gym goer or somebody who just wants to move and be healthy, you don't have to pinpoint or focus way too much on those specifics when it comes to that. For me, I used to be very much into the whole bodybuilding situation. Okay, I wasn't a bodybuilder per se, but I was very much into the whole idea of building muscle and losing fat, except for the fact that I never wanted to do the building muscle part in terms of creating a calorie deficit. I was always just focused on the losing fat part while still wanting to build muscle. But you don't really have to go into a specific cut or bulking phase. It really depends on the person. I don't want us to think that those are the only ways for you to reach your goals. It's just that it could be a bit more efficient if you chose a specific situation or a specific path that you would like to go on. Because for me, I never really saw the results of my journey or my path until recently. And it's crazy because I've been lifting a lot less. But then you realize that all of the work that you've been doing over the past few years really does build up until there's a point where you just see all of those results coming in together from years of working on yourself. Does that make sense? So the big question, gain muscle or lose fat first? Well, it's not a one-size-fits-all answer. It would definitely depend on, first, your current body composition. If you want to build more muscle, you'll probably have to focus on a calorie surplus. And if you have a higher body fat percentage, then maybe you could lean towards more losing body fat. On the other side, it also depends on your goals, the performance, or the aesthetics, or the health markers. Which one do you need more of? For example, we have the elderly who might want to focus on building more muscle. We have certain situations where somebody would need to build muscle. Then we have situations where it would be great to focus more on body fat percentage. And then, of course, there is lifestyle and habits. Based on your diet quality, your training, your experience, your stress, and your sleep, which one could fit best for you? It really, really depends. Now, when would somebody prioritize muscle gains? Well, if they are relatively leaner or already a low body fat percentage, we can now focus on prioritizing muscle gain. And also people who may be struggling with the whole skinny fat idea, which is you already have low muscle to begin with, you can definitely prioritize that. And of course, if you're trying to improve your metabolism, then building muscle can be a focus. So now the question is, how do you lose fat and how do you build muscle? Well, for both of them, you definitely need movement. And more often than not, the movement that you want to prioritize is, of course, resistance or strength training. Hindi ka kasi makakabuild ng muscle kapag ka hindi ka naglilift ng weights. You can eat a lot of protein, you can watch all of these videos and take all of these products and supplements, pero ang core ng pagbuild ng muscle ay sa exercise. Because when you exercise and when you lift weights, you destroy that muscle and it will have to repair bigger. That's how muscle is made and that's how muscle is built. And usually you do this with a calorie surplus so that there is enough energy to rebuild those muscles. Kasi kapag workout ka ng workout, pero naka-calorie deficit ka naman, at a certain point, your body isn't going to be able to efficiently rebuild those muscles because there's just not enough energy to begin with. Now, same with fat loss. Even if you're trying to lose fat, you still want to maintain your muscle mass, and you would still, of course, incorporate strength training. Cardio would more likely fit into your endurance and your stamina building, as well as possibly helping the journey of fat loss in terms of course, keeping up that calorie deficit and helping your body stay fit. Now, when it comes to food, we still want a balanced diet. Hindi naman kailangan hindi na kumain ng carbs, puro fats na lang, puro protein na lang. No, it doesn't have to be that way. Whether you're trying to build muscle or lose fat, a balanced diet is still important. However, we do put proper emphasis on protein. Kasi malaki talaga ang role ni protein sa pagka-lose ng fat at sa pag-build ng muscle. Of course, in building muscle, you need the amino acids from protein to help rebuild. And when you're trying to lose fat, you need the amino acids from protein to help you preserve muscles. So when it comes to fat loss, like we mentioned, your body wants to use or utilize stored energy because there isn't enough in the body, and it will usually tap into either stored fat or in some cases muscle. And we want to prevent that, which is where protein intake really plays a big role. Studies show that those who intake enough protein while they are trying to lose fat, while they are in a calorie deficit, while they are lifting weights, can still maintain their muscle mass as long as they're eating enough protein. Now, it doesn't have to be buckets and buckets of protein. I think a lot of the internet also just overemphasizes protein intake. Protein requirements are usually 1.2 to 2.2 grams per day, with a sweet spot being 1.6 to 1.8 grams of protein per day, because it has been seen that around that amount is enough to help you preserve your muscles without feeling like you're eating a whole chicken every single day. Kasi madalas kapag sumobra ka naman ng protina ay hindi naman masyadong marami ang extra benepisyo nito kumpara sa pagkain ng enough lang na protein. So you don't have to overdo when it comes to the protein. Now, like we said, when you're trying to build muscle, we would like to do a calorie surplus. And I would probably recommend 200 to 300 calories per day so we can minimize the increase of body fat compared to your muscle mass. But it's inevitable that as you build muscle, you may likely build some fat or have some fat alongside it. And just know that that is not a bad thing. On the other side, for a fat loss journey, I would recommend, again, 200 to 300 calorie deficit and lower if you are shorter, and a higher deficit if you have a bit more body fat to work with. A conservative surplus and deficit is definitely the way I would go for more sustainable results and also just a more enjoyable journey. Body recomposition is probably something we all kind of want to work towards, but we only hear about weight loss online all the time. But the goal is really to build and preserve as much muscle as we grow older and to, of course, work towards having a sustainable body fat percentage. Not too low where we are not able to have proper hormonal balance, but also not too high that impacts our metabolic health moving forward. And to reach that more likely falls on the building of habits. Habits that take time, habits that don't show up overnight, and habits that require a lot of kindness and patience. In my own journey with my fitness and my health, I heavily relied on a lot of cardio for years because I thought that's what was going to give me the Victoria's Secret model body that I dreamed of at that time. And then I started to slowly lift weights and started to build more muscle, and I was seeing the definition and the shape that I was looking towards. See, you're not going to build a big butt and you're not going to have the hourglass shape if you're not going to build muscle. Because a lot of those things that you see, those shapes and aesthetics that you see, are from muscles. When you build your lats here, you create that V shape that helps you make that hourglass shape. And when you build your butt, you also create a little bit of that. But something to note is that most of the time a big butt is also largely related to having more fat in your body, because that is kind of what pads the butt. See, there's just so many misconceptions about how your body is supposed to look because online it's just be as skinny as possible. Tapos, iba-iba naman yung body shapes and sizes na nakita mo, but to get there, you actually have to build muscle as well. We talk a lot about aesthetics in this episode, but the main thing is to remember body composition or body recomposition is more than just aesthetics. It's also about health, and largely related to health by preserving your muscles and preserving your metabolism, as well as minimizing your risk of metabolic health concerns. Pero ang pinaka-importante pa rin ay pag-build natin ng habits. Getting enough sleep, eating enough to support your goals, stress management, and moving your body in a way that you enjoy. At the end of the day, that is what is going to get you where you want to be. But hopefully this episode helped you in kind of clarifying where you want to be on your journey and how you want to get there. If you are a beginner, I would largely focus on body recomposition. If you are a detained athlete, or if you have a higher body fat percentage, we don't have to focus too much on just the scale, but focusing on building muscle and losing fat, or again, body recomposition, can be a very great goal to work towards. It's not just about lessening that scale, it's about feeling your best and making sure that you also work towards it in the best way possible. Sana nakatulong ang episode na ito para masagot ang inyong mga tanong. But if you have other questions about body recomposition that we didn't fully get to dive into or answer, then let me know in the comments below. So now let's do an outfit check. I'm wearing a jacket, like I said. This lovely jacket here, which is a brown kind of pilot or like air driver. I don't know, but it's like, I like this jacket a lot. It's from Pull&Bear. I also have a cute little top inside, which is just from Shopee. I'll link it below, don't worry. I also have my cute little ring stack, and I got these rings from very different places. I don't actually remember a lot of it. That's why I usually just say like usual ring stack. But I love them. They're cute. donut earrings, of course, from the Craftolio, and we have a little cute bandana, which is from 3am Art by Lay. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Don't forget to subscribe and follow if you liked it wherever you're listening to podcasts, and don't forget to give it a thumbs up. You can also follow me at itsjosebastian on all of my socials to follow more along my journey of health and nutrition, and follow at the Donut Box Pod to be part of the other episodes. Until then, you already know, you always deserve to eat. Thanks for listening to the pod. This is the Donut Box.